Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Ryobi pcl660b 18-volt flashlight. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, starting off at the bottom of the tool, we have the 18-volt battery slot, which will accept any of Ryobi's 18-volt batteries. Overall, the battery slot is nice and firm and secure, and there really isn't too much wiggling, nothing more than what you'd expect from a typical Ryobi battery. So I don't think there's any danger of the battery falling out, and overall, I don't have any complaints when it comes to the battery slot on this particular tool, so it gets a pass. And next up we have the belt clip mounting hole. I am a fan that they include a belt clip mounting hole option. I am not a fan of the fact that they did not include a belt clip for mounting it to your belt. I think considering how much they're charging for this light, the fact they should have included a belt clip is a no-brainer, and the fact they decided to cheap out is definitely a negative in my opinion. But can't really do much about that now. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the grip. Now the grip on this particular light is a pistol style grip, and it has a nice rubberized texture similar to what you'd find on most of their other tools, and quite frankly I'm perfectly satisfied with this particular grip option. I actually like it a little bit more than the grip that I have on my Makita handheld light that's similar to this one, and at the end of the day I don't have any major complaints about it. It provides plenty of room for gripping it, whether you have large hands or small hands, and quite frankly, I don't think that anyone's going to have any major complaints when it comes to this particular grip, although I could be wrong. But at the end of the day, it gets a pass in my book. Okay, next up we have the on and off switch. The on and off switch is located at the top of the grip, and it has a nice rubberized textured cover that goes over it, which definitely makes it feel high quality. Overall, the switch itself is a fairly simple operational switch. You press it once to turn on the light, and then you press it again to turn off the light. So it is about as basic as you can get, which is perfectly fine for me. The lights that have multiple modes means that you're going to have to cycle through those multiple modes, and at the end of the day that's kind of a pain, and it's also going to wear out your trigger much quicker than say a simple operational switch such as this. So for me personally, I prefer having a single mode at least on this particular kind of light, and so it gets a pass from me. And next up we have the sling mount. The sling mount is located on the back of the light at the top of the grip, and quite frankly it is plenty strong, and I don't think you're going to have to worry about it breaking easily. It's made out of a very thick plastic, and it seems to be able to hold up just fine, so it gets a pass in my book. Okay, next up we have the tilting head. Now the tilting head is a nice feature, and it provides 130 degrees of, well, tiltable adjustment, and it works fairly well, but there is a downside, and that is the fact that there are no hard stops. Basically how the tilting head on this particular light works is via friction. And if you're going down, say, a dirt road, or if you're running or jogging and there's vibrations or jarring movement, the light is going to adjust its head on its own because there are no hard stops, and this is definitely a downside in my opinion. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it is something that you need to keep in mind. I would say that the adjustable head on this particular light is more for a stationary environment and not so much for, well, running, jogging, or driving down dirt roads in a motorized vehicle. I think if you're walking, the head will probably stay in place fairly well, but it would have been nice to have positive or hard stops in between, well, the furthest back position and the furthest forward position. And the fact they did not do that is definitely a little cheap in my opinion. Other lights that are similar to this on the market do have those hard stops in between the different positions, and quite frankly I think Ryobi could have included hard stops considering how much money they're asking for this particular light. So in my opinion this is a downside to this particular light. Although I still will take the tilting head over the rotating head that was on their previous generation of this light. Okay, next up we have the light output. The light output is produced by a single LED bead, and it is rated at 280 lumens. The light output is a fairly neutral white colored light, which is actually what I prefer when it comes to a handheld flashlight. I'm not a big fan of too warm or too cool colors when it comes to a work light or any light, to be honest. So I am a fan of that. Now the light, this is more of a search style light and not so much a flood style light, meaning that, well, if you have something that's too close to it, it's probably going to be lit up too much or be too bright. I'd say the minimum working distance is going to probably be about 1.5 to 2 feet, and it should be able to light up objects up to about 500 feet, which is a fairly decent performance, at least when it comes to this particular sort of light at 280 lumens. So let's go ahead and compare this particular light against another light that I have that is in the same form factor, a Makita work light, and we'll see how they stack up against each other. Okay, first up we have the Ryobi. It has a very bright white color neutral light, and it keeps it being very tight and centered, which is going to be good for looking at stuff further away, but not so good for close-up stuff. Okay, next up we have the Makita. Now the Makita has 4 LED beads, but it's only rated at 160 lumens, which is about 120 lumens less than the Ryobi. Now the light output that's coming from the Makita is definitely much warmer. It's a little bit too warm for my particular taste, but I will say that the Makita is doing a better job at having the light dispersed into a less tight beam, which is going to be better for working in tight spaces, such as in a crawl space or underneath the sink. Okay, now when it comes to the color of the lights, it's a little bit hard to tell from the video because the camera actually corrected the temperature of the color a little bit, and it doesn't portray it 100% correctly. The Makita is actually warmer than it appears to be in the video, and the Ryobi is a little bit warmer as well. I actually really do prefer the Ryobi's light color profile over the Makita's simply because, well, it's a little bit more color neutral than the Makita's. The Makita gives you that kind of that orange tint or that warm color tinting, and it just doesn't display accurate colors, which is not that helpful for a lot of different situations. So when it comes to real world life, I really do prefer the colors that the Ryobi are giving out over the colors that the Makita are giving out when it comes to light production. And the warmer colored light is the Makita, and the cooler colored light is the Ryobi in the video. Okay, now for an outdoor light test. First up we have the Makita. Now the RV in the test is about 80 feet away, and the Makita is doing a fairly decent job at lighting up the distance fairly evenly in between where I'm standing and the RV in the distance. But unfortunately for the Makita, the Ryobi works much better outdoors. The Ryobi produces 280 lumens versus the Makita's 160 lumens, so you get the point. It's a much brighter light, and the color profile of the Ryobi I think also works better at a distance. So overall, the Ryobi wins the outdoor test. Now, just because the Makita is dimmer, it still has a couple of things going for it. One, it has 4 LED beads versus the 1 LED from the Ryobi, meaning that if one burns out, you still have 3 additional beads, so your tool is going to last longer. And, well, quite frankly, the positive stops that the Makita has in between the different tilting positions is also a much better feature than Ryobi's friction-based tilting system. So at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you and what you personally want or need when it comes to these two different tools. Okay, let's go through the pros and cons. And first up we have the belt clip mount. The belt clip mount, even though they don't include a belt clip, is definitely still a nice feature, and I would definitely consider to be a pro feature. 18 volt. This will work with all of your Ryobi 18 volt batteries, and if you want to adapt batteries over from another brand, you can do that as well. Just remember, you do that at your own risk. Grip. Overall, the grip on this particular tool is very comfortable. I actually prefer it a little bit over the Makita's grip, although the Makita's grip isn't bad either. So overall, I would definitely consider the grip to be a pro on this particular tool. Tilting head. I really do like the tilting head option, although it could be much better in my opinion, and I do think it is far superior to the old rotating head that you'd find on their old work light. So quite frankly, I do like the tilting head, and I would consider it to be a pro feature. Build. Overall, the build quality seems to be fairly good. I've dropped the light a couple of times, and I haven't had any major issues or anything break on it. So overall, I'd say the build is fairly decent on this particular light. Runtime. Overall, the runtime seems to be very good with this particular light. Ryobi claims it has a runtime of 22 hours with who knows what battery, since they don't describe or declare what battery they tested that with, but overall I didn't have any issues while using this with several different projects, so I have to say the runtime seems to be decent, at least for me. So yeah, moving on. And the first con is price. Coming in at $30, that is a little bit too expensive in my opinion, and that's actually $5 more expensive than when I originally purchased this light a couple months ago. So quite frankly, the price is a little bit outrageous. Considering that it doesn't have hard stops in between the tilting angles, as well as it doesn't include a belt clip, I think $30 is too much for this particular light, and I really think it should be priced closer to the $20 mark, and $25 at the max. So in my opinion, the price is a con. No hard stops on the tilting head. Overall, the fact there are no hard stops is definitely a negative in my opinion, and you'll definitely notice it adjusting its head if you're walking, running, or driving down a bumpy road. So quite frankly, this is an area of the tool that needs to be improved. And that's it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this particular work light. Overall, this particular work light is a good work light, and it has a lot going for it. But it does have a couple of very glaring negatives that are going against it. The fact there is no hard stops in between the different tilting angles is definitely a downside, and the price is also a downside. And for anybody who thinks the price is still somewhat reasonable, let me refer you to Harbor Freight and their work light, which is $12 less expensive than the Ryobi. Now, the Ryobi definitely has a little bit better brand recognition behind it, and I definitely trust the Ryobi's battery platform more than I trust Breyer's platform, since Harbor Freight seems to like to change their battery platforms every 5 minutes. So at the end of the day, I think the Ryobi is probably still the better buy, but I think Ryobi needs to consider their competitors and maybe drop the prices on some of their tools, since they've been going a little bit crazy lately. I mean, a $5 increase on one of their tools in less than a couple of months is a little bit insane in my opinion, and that's just being fairly conservative. Some of their other tools have definitely gone way up in price, and I don't think they can really justify their increases. Although somebody will probably say I'm wrong, I'm going to say I'm right here. So this is a matter of opinion now, and if you disagree with me, well, fine, so be it. But when it comes to this particular light, I think it's a decent light, but I think it's overpriced. So if you don't mind paying the premium in the price, I still would recommend it. And that is it for this particular video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. God bless.